My name's Abby. Just so a little bit of background on me, I have been the Section 106 architectural review person for a year and a half this week, actually. So I'm still a little new to it, but I have seen over 3,000 projects in that time. So I'm excited to present to you today. I got my undergraduate degree from Shepherd University in Jefferson County, and then I have my master's in historic preservation from Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, Michigan. So just a little background. So we are talking about CLGs and the Section 106 review consultation. So firstly, just a little background on Section 106. What is it? This all goes back to the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. Section 106 was a portion of that code that is the enacting regulations of that law. And it's been restructured in, I believe it was the 90s, which has led to its sort of newer title of 36 CFR Part 800. So when we say Section 106, we are ultimately meaning 36 CFR Part 800, protection of historic properties. And this just states that federal agencies, when they are using federal funds or are issuing permits, they must ensure that they are considering the effects to historic resources. It's not really a very toothy regulation, but it is making these agencies consider the effects. So again, things that trigger Section 106 review are federal funding and federal permits. Most often we see them from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We get some from USDA. All kinds of things come in to us for their federal funding, usually more so than permitting. And so the SHPOs were created to sort of undertake this review on behalf of the federal government. So that way, state by state, you know, these reviews are done, and it is the agency's job to present these effects and how, you know, are there historic properties? Are they being affected? It's their job to present that to the State Historic Preservation Office to concur with. And sometimes it's a pretty smooth process, sometimes it's not. There's a lot of variations in what we see. And then in that, there are additional consulting parties. The SHPO itself, we are considered a consulting party. We are not any sort of agency or anything like that. We are just a consulting party. CLGs are also considered a consulting party, and we'll get a little bit into some more of those later. So what is a historic resource? In Section 106, when we use the word historic, we mean that this resource is eligible for or included in the National Register of Historic Places. And so that means that this resource has the meets one of the 4 criteria for inclusion, either having relation to broad patterns in history or a significant individual, or has very interesting and historic architectural design, or has the potential to reveal historic discoveries, aka archaeology. So it has to meet one of those things, as well as be over the age of 45. We use 45, technically it's 50, but the length of some of these projects, we just do the extra 5 years sort of just in case, just sort of broadens that cushion a little bit. So if we have a resource, is it individually eligible or is it contributing to a historic district? Those are 2 things that we have to look at. Often we're often looking at contributing resources to historic districts in impacts in towns and stuff like that, where there are these districts, but we do assess there are things that are eligible as contributing, but maybe they're not so significant or unique that they're individually eligible, those sorts of things. And then again, it's not just that they're old, right? Are they significant in any way? Are they unique in any way? These sort of things sort of define what is a historic resource. So with this presentation, we sort of thought it would be better to show you the process, so that way we can look at a real world example and see where you as a CLG can fit into this process. So we are looking at the demolition and replacement of the Clark Street Bridge in Mannington, West Virginia. It is in Marion County. It is a really interesting resource. It's technically a pair of bridges that were built together and sort of make this V intersection. So there's an interesting component to that. But this was submitted to us by the Division of Highways with the Federal Highways Administration. And they do excellent work for us. This is really a clean cut, beautiful process. It's not always that way. Sometimes there's a lot of back and forth. It really just depends on the project. So with this, we have a couple of resources impacted. We have the bridge itself, of course, and then we also have the Mannington Historic District. This is a case where this bridge is both sort of individually eligible and is contributing to a resource, or contributing to a district, excuse me. And so the process, how this goes, is they submit to us, they say, hey, we have this historic resource, this is going to be an adverse effect. And we concur with them. We say, absolutely, it's going to be an adverse effect. And this is resolved through the actual process is avoidance, minimization, or mitigation. In this case, because it's the demolition of something, it's mitigation through a memorandum of agreement. So this is just a little bit more on the historic resources affected. This is an excerpt right out of the Mannington Historic District National Register nomination. It's talking about both of these bridges, number 27 and 28, and who constructed them, and talking about sort of the visual elements, the scrolled balustrades, and these other unique looks to it that sort of set it apart. And then this little excerpt is from actually one of the mitigation materials, which we will talk about a little bit later, but it is a really good description. This was the Division of Highways sort of take on it. The bridge was built in 1926 at the same time as the Buffalo Street Bridge. It's eligible under Criterion A and Criterion C, A being broad patterns in history, C being design, and who constructed it and these other things. So here's some photographs of this bridge, some close-ups of those elements that were sort of mentioned in those two excerpts. As you can see, it's a triple span, which is a pretty sizable bridge. The bottom photo was taken from Google Street View. I just snapped that, but the other three photos come from the documentation that they provided, that Highways provided to us. So we can see the lamppost, we can see the scrolled balustrades. It's really, these are the character defining features of this bridge, and this is what's going to be lost from this historic district. So getting back to consulting parties. This is the list of the most common consulting parties. Of course, the SHPO, and then the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. They, if you don't know a lot about them, they are sort of the guiding body of historic preservation in the federal eye. Straight from their page, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation is an independent federal agency with the primary mission to encourage historic preservation in the government and across the nation. A key ACHP function is overseeing the federal historic preservation review process established by Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. They serve as the federal policy advisor to the President and Congress. They recommend administrative and legislative improvements for protecting the nation's diverse heritage and they review federal programs and policies to promote effectiveness, coordination, and consistency with national preservation policies. So that's pulled right off their page, and we will talk a little bit more about them in the next slide. But they're a consulting party as well. And then the most common one in West Virginia that almost everybody reaches out to with their projects is PAWV, the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia. They are almost always included, especially by highways. They're really good about reaching out to them. And then the CLGs, of course, that's where you come in. In this case, the Mannington HLC was contacted about this demolition. And in that, it's the agencies, in this case, Highway's job to say to PAWV, the HLC, these consulting parties that they're reaching out to, hey, here's this historic bridge. Here's why it needs demolished. It failed all of these inspections. It's falling apart. It's impossible to upkeep. The weight of traffic, the amount of traffic this bridge was simply not built for. Those sorts of things are to be in that communication as well, to be transparent about the situation to the consulting parties. And then we have a few others there that are Native tribes are almost always reached out to. And then the others are sort of hit and miss depending upon where we're located at with the project. Oops, it's the wrong thing. Okay, so what is a memorandum of agreement? So a memorandum of agreement is a legal document that acts as the mitigation to an adverse effect to historic resources that is being done by a federally funded or permitted project. So the goals of this MOA, as we call it, is it includes stipulations that are actions that the agency can take or are going to take to sort of do their best to either document or save or recreate historic elements, historic resources that are going to be impacted by the project. Now, these stipulations, this is where consulting parties, where the CLGs, are going to have this opportunity to participate. Assuming, like in this case, that the agency has reached out to you on the front end of the project, you're already aware, and oftentimes, like in this case, the HLC offered to the Division of Highways, we agree with the project, the bridge is in really, really rough shape. However, we would appreciate it if you would consider the architectural design of the new bridge and that it be sympathetic to the historic character of the district. And especially with it being twin bridges, really to match the other bridge well enough without sort of pretending to be a historic bridge. And the MOA also includes a duration. Usually it's about 5 years, and that is just something to hold everybody accountable. So, you know, Highways has 5 years upon receiving the final signature to perform all of the stipulations, or the MOA can be amended to be extended, which happens fairly often in bigger projects. This, not so much. Or if the MOA happens to expire before all of the stipulations are carried out, then you have to create a whole new MOA, which again, the agency will reach back out to you and say, hey, this expired. We're re-inviting you to participate again. And in these stipulations, it doesn't just say, you know, they have to document it. The stipulation will say something more detailed with it needs to be documented per a historic preservation inventory form and photographed according to the National Register and National Landmarks guidelines. It'll have these expectations laid out so that it's very clear and concise on what these agencies need to do before they can continue their project or in this case, demolish the bridge, right? So on this other half of the screen, we have the list of ACHP resources for MOA drafting. Claire just dropped a link in the chat that goes directly to the page that this is on. This list is sort of towards the bottom of that page, and at the bottom you can see I have circled in red sample stipulations. So if you're in an MOA, if you're invited to participate, this will be an opportunity for you to really decide for your community, what would benefit us the most. Would we like to see the character recreated somewhere else? Would we like to see an element preserved? Would we like to see an interpretive panel or a small park? All of these sort of things, it really allows you as the CLG, the HLC, to represent your community and their best interests in that. So that's a really good place to start with the sample solutions. If you're in the situation and just trying to think of stuff, that's a really good place to start. The ACHP website in general is a really great resource for Section 106 and understanding it. They actually have a citizen's guide to Section 106, which is a really valuable read. And I recommend looking into that if you are interested. Let's stop there. Are there any questions? Good, doing a good job. Excellent. So back to our project at hand with the Clarksburg Street Bridge. I've included in this slide a screenshot of the entire first page of this MOA. So this is what almost all MOAs look like. As you can see, it's a list of whereas statements. And in these statements, it introduces the project, who's involved, what the effects are. And in this one specifically, we have on that sort of last to the bottom whereas statement that mentions the Mannington Landmarks Commission participation. And this document, again, legally binding, requires several signatures, and there is a difference between a invited signatory and a consulting party. Should have looked into that a little more, but if you have questions about that, we can get you answers to that. I just don't have them off the top of my head. Point being, there's a lot of signatures that are needed, and all MOAs are sent to the ACHP for review and sort of requesting whether they would like to participate or not. If it's a bigger project, then they are more inclined to participate. But with this one just being a bridge demolition, I believe they chose to not participate. Yes. So let's get a closer look. So this is that last paragraph, or the next to last paragraph, kind of blown up. As we can see here, it says the Mannington Landmarks Commission replied by email asking for consideration to be given to the architectural treatments. This is, again, referencing those balustrades and the lamppost and these other things, and matching it to the twin bridge that still exists. So here is a screenshot of the MOA's stipulations. These are exactly as they appear in the agreement. As you can see, we have 1 through 5. 1 and 2 being really the documentation, talking about the photographs, a written history, a completed historic preservation, or I'm sorry, historic property inventory form. And Highways is really good about this. They, also put in that if they find any available plans, historic of the bridge, that they will share those with us as well. The third one is to add the bridge to their historic bridge website, which I believe at this time was sort of in its infancy, but has really blown up. Now they've got all kinds of resources on there, even beyond bridges, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then stipulation number 4, the architectural treatments. This is exactly where the HLC participating comes in. This is the result of them speaking up and saying, hey, would you consider the architectural treatments? In this, it's saying, here's how we are going to do that. They're recreating the concrete balustrade parapets, these things. And they typically will coordinate with us through that design as well, just to make sure that it's not a unilateral decision on their part. And then number 5, it's a brochure about the bridge. This project occurred between 2012 and 2015, roughly, I think is when the bridge was constructed. So we're actually kind of trying to get away from brochures. It has become one of the go-to stipulations for bridges, and just given how the movement of people have changed, brochures are kind of hit and miss. But we will look at that and see what that looks like. So stipulations 1 and 2, they are delivered to us in this state level historic documentation report that's put together by a Division of Highways historian. And in this, it includes the history of the bridge, the reason for replacement, the completed HPI form, all kinds of visual documentation, a copy of the brochure, a copy of the MOA, and post-construction photos. These all come to us in a packet, and we are offered an opportunity to comment if we, notice a discrepancy in perhaps the histories and these other things. We do have the opportunity to bring that up with Highways and have it changed before it's distributed to wherever it's promised to go. Stipulation 3. So this is the visual of their historic resources website, Highways Through History. It's really a great website. If you get 5 or 10 minutes, Claire just dropped the link to it. I definitely encourage you to explore it. When it was created, it was mostly just for bridges and for road infrastructure resources that were being impacted by new projects. But that has expanded a little bit. We actually just reviewed a project with them regarding a 1930s WPA built headquarters in, Barber County. There was a little stone gas shed that they are not even demolishing, really. They're deconstructing it and saving the stones as part of the mitigation for that. But they are placing that little building on this website as well. So it is expanding in scope. But this is one of my favorite regular mitigations that I see. It makes the information accessible. It presents it, it has the brochure, it has the history, all these other things. It's just, I think, a really good way to present it. So stipulation 4, this is the architectural treatment. This is what the Mannington HLC advocated for. So we have a before and after of the bridge. In the before, we can see some differences. It's a lower parapet. There's a bit of a gap underneath, sort of intermittently. But there are 7 scrolls. I think I counted that right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 scrolls, and there are 7 scrolls in the new one as well. So they've recreated that as accurately as possible. Now, the new one, it is higher. It is lacking that gap underneath. These reasons are most likely for safety concerns and regulations that the Division of Highways and the Federal Highway Administration have to follow. They have all kinds of various acronymed rules and regulations that they have to follow with bridges. So this is the best that they could do while still meeting those regulations and protections. And finally, stipulation number 5. So this is the brochure. This is a really well done brochure. They have kind of, in the same way that we're kind of getting away from it, Highways has dwindled this down to more of a 2-sided rack card than a trifold brochure. But as you can see, it has a brief history, it has photos, it has a photo of the plaque, and it has information. I believe it also references the website. It might not, because it sounded like the website didn't quite exist yet. But on the new ones, it references the website for people to come and visit. And it has a contact for Highways typically as well. So ultimately, why should CLGs get involved? As we've kind of been sprinkling throughout this, it's an opportunity for you to represent your community's wants, needs, thoughts, feelings, opinions on historic resources and how they're being impacted. The Section 106 process really by nature just does not have a lot of teeth. There's not much we can make happen. We can push, we can sort of discuss and work with the agencies to make sure that both of our goals are met to the fullest extent possible. So their project still meets its goals, while our goal of protecting historic properties is met as best as it can be. This whole process can be pretty confusing. MOAs themselves can be confusing, but there's definitely resources out there to help you. Again, that ACHP website is a really good one if this is something that you really want to take interest of. But our office, we're also always here to help you with that. We want you to get involved. You know, we want these communities, your communities, to be involved in these processes as much as possible. So here's our contact information. I also have our Section 106 coordinator. You can reach out to her as well. If she doesn't have an answer, she'll forward you to me anyway. And of course, you can always reach out to Claire. But that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions? Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Abby, for presenting. That concludes our annual CLG training for 2026. I will be getting copies of the recordings out to you within the next couple of days, as well as the resources, like Elizabeth's handout that were shared today. But please, in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out with any questions.
Great. Thank you, Claire.